The room was silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the heavy, uneven breathing of a dog who didn't understand why the world had suddenly turned against him. Four uniformed officers stood with arms crossed, their faces set in stone. A clipboard rested on a metal table. A date had been circled in red. It was today. The K9 was scheduled to be put down within the hour. If you believe in kindness, in redemption, and in second chances for those who have given everything, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard. The Belgian Malinois sat on the cold tile floor, his muscular frame still proud despite the tremor in his legs. His name was Rex. For 6 years, Rex had served with unwavering loyalty. He had sniffed out explosives in abandoned buildings, chased down suspects twice his size, and stood between danger and the humans he loved. His record had once been flawless. His handler used to say Rex had a sixth sense, that he could smell fear before it even existed. But that was before the incident. 2 months earlier, during a routine training exercise, something had snapped. A loud metallic crash from a falling barricade had triggered a reaction no one saw coming. Rex had lunged, not at a criminal, not at a threat, but at a fellow officer who had moved too quickly behind him. The bite wasn't fatal, but it was serious. Policies were clear. A K9 who turned unpredictable became a liability. A liability in law enforcement had no place in the field. The officers who once praised him now avoided eye contact. They called him unstable, dangerous, broken. The same dog who had saved lives was now labeled beyond repair. Rex did not understand the paperwork or the hushed conversations. He only understood that his handler had stopped visiting. That the kennel door stayed closed longer each day. That the scent of trust had been replaced with something colder, fear mixed with disappointment. Across town, in a modest rehabilitation center near the naval base, a man sat on a wooden bench by an open window, listening to the wind move through the trees. Senior Chief Daniel Hayes had once commanded respect with a single glance. A decorated Navy SEAL, he had survived deployments that would have broken most men. But 3 years earlier, an IED explosion overseas had stolen his sight and taken half his team with it. Darkness had become his constant companion. Daniel learned to navigate the world with a cane and discipline. He refused pity. He refused to let bitterness claim him. Yet at night, when silence grew too heavy, memories crept in. The explosion. The ringing in his ears. The last sound of his brothers calling out. Survivor's guilt was a shadow deeper than blindness. The VA doctors recommended a service dog. Daniel refused at first. He didn't want to depend on another living soul. He had lost enough. But loneliness is a quiet predator. It stalks even the strongest warriors. Eventually, he agreed to meet a few candidates from a nearby K9 unit. That same morning, Rex was led into the training hall for a final evaluation. It wasn't really an evaluation. It was procedure. A formality before the inevitable injection. The officers stood in a line, their expressions guarded. Rex's ears twitched at every movement. He sensed tension like static in the air. Then the door opened again. The rhythmic tap of a cane echoed against the walls. Daniel Hayes entered with calm, measured steps. Though his eyes could not see, his posture radiated presence. Conversation stopped. Even Rex turned his head, nose lifting to test the air. The scent was unfamiliar, salt, metal, determination, and something steady beneath it. Not fear. Not judgment. Daniel paused several feet from the dog. He listened to the room, to the breathing, to the subtle shift of weight from boots against tile. He didn't ask for a detailed report. He didn't request the incident file. He simply stood there, absorbing the atmosphere. Rex's handler cleared his throat and began explaining the bite, the unpredictability, the recommendation for euthanasia. Words like protocol and safety and risk filled the space. Daniel said nothing. He stepped forward slowly. The officers tensed. Rex watched the approaching figure carefully. The man carried no visible threat. No raised voice. No aggressive posture. Only a cane in one hand and a steady heartbeat that Rex could almost feel through the air. Daniel stopped within arm's reach. And then he spoke one word. Stay. It wasn't loud. It wasn't commanding in the traditional sense. But it carried weight. Authority forged through years of leading men into chaos. Trust embedded in its tone. Rex froze. The room seemed to exhale all at once. The dog who had been labeled unstable did not lunge. He did not growl. He sat, muscles tight, eyes locked on a man who could not see him. Something passed between them in that silence, an understanding beyond sight. Daniel lowered himself carefully to one knee. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, but no one intervened. Slowly, deliberately, Daniel extended his hand, palm open. Rex hesitated. His world had become confusion and rejection. But the man before him smelled of resilience. Of scars that ran deeper than skin. Rex leaned forward, pressing his nose against the offered hand. A connection sparked. Daniel felt the warmth of fur beneath his fingers, the steady rise and fall of breath. He traced the outline of Rex's head, the shape of his ears. The dog remained still, as if recognizing that this human, too, carried invisible wounds. In that moment, Daniel understood something without needing to see it. This wasn't a vicious animal. This was a soldier who had been startled by trauma. A warrior whose instincts had been twisted by one terrible moment. Daniel rose to his feet and faced the officers. He said the word again. Mine. It wasn't a request. The room erupted in protest. Liability. Insurance. Risk assessments. Daniel listened patiently. When they finished, he spoke quietly but firmly. He explained that he knew what it meant to be labeled damaged. To be told you were no longer fit for duty. He spoke of the explosion, of waking up in darkness, of hearing whispers about early retirement and permanent disability. He said that sometimes the problem wasn't aggression. Sometimes it was fear disguised as strength. He offered to take full responsibility. The decision wasn't immediate. Paperwork had to be rewritten. Waivers signed. But something had shifted in that sterile room. Rex was not led to the back that day. Instead, he was loaded into a transport van beside a blind man who trusted him without ever seeing him. The first weeks were not easy. Daniel lived in a small house near the coast. The scent of salt air drifted through open windows. Rex struggled at first with the absence of structured drills and barking commands. Nightmares plagued him. Sudden noises triggered defensive stances. Once, when a pan clattered in the kitchen, Rex's body stiffened, teeth bared for a split second before recognition returned. Daniel never struck him. Never raised his voice. Instead, he would kneel, place a steady hand on Rex's neck, and breathe slowly until the dog matched his rhythm. Two broken warriors learning to regulate the storms inside them. Daniel trained Rex not through dominance but partnership. He attached a specialized harness and practiced walking the neighborhood. At first, Rex pulled too hard, uncertain of his role. But gradually, he began adjusting his pace to Daniel's steps. He learned to stop at curbs, to guide around obstacles, to sense changes in terrain. Something extraordinary happened during those walks. The same hyper-awareness that once made Rex an exceptional K-9 officer became a gift. He could detect approaching cyclists before Daniel heard them. He could sense shifts in crowd density, steering his partner smoothly through farmers' markets and busy sidewalks. And at night, when memories threatened to overwhelm Daniel, Rex would rest his head on the bed, grounding him in the present. Healing did not come in dramatic breakthroughs. It came in small victories. A trip to the grocery store without incident. A thunderstorm endured without panic. A jog along the shoreline where Rex ran freely but always circled back. Months passed. One afternoon, as they walked along the pier, a child broke free from her mother's grasp and ran toward the edge, chasing a dropped balloon. Daniel heard the mother's scream but could not see the danger unfolding. Rex reacted instantly. He surged forward, blocking the child's path just before she reached the slippery edge, nudging her gently backward until her mother grabbed her. Applause rippled through the bystanders. Daniel knelt and wrapped his arms around Rex's neck. He felt the powerful heartbeat beneath his hands and knew without sight that the dog's tail was wagging. News of the rescue traveled quickly. Local officers recognized Rex from the reports. They came to see him, not as a liability, but as proof that context matters. That trauma can distort behavior, but it does not erase worth. Rex was never returned to active police duty. He didn't need to be. His mission had changed. Daniel began speaking at rehabilitation centers and veteran gatherings, Rex by his side. He talked about resilience, about refusing to let a single mistake define a life. He spoke about the moment in that training hall when he chose to see potential instead of risk. He always said the same thing: sometimes the most powerful word isn't shouted. Sometimes it's spoken softly, with belief behind it. Stay. That word had anchored Rex. Mine had given him belonging. And belonging can save a soul. Years later, when Rex's muzzle turned gray and his steps slowed, Daniel remained at his side just as faithfully. On their final evening together, Daniel lay on the living room floor, one hand resting on the dog's chest, feeling each breath. There were no sterile rooms. No cold clipboards. Only gratitude. Rex passed peacefully, not as a rejected liability, but as a hero who had served twice. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that no one is beyond redemption, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video so more people can believe in second chances. And before we close, I have one special request. Comment the word "stay" below if you believe loyalty and compassion can change a life. Because somewhere right now, there may be another Rex waiting for someone brave enough to speak one word and mean it.